Welcome to Game Fondue Reviews. In this video, we're going to take a look at Macao. Macao is a board game designed by Stefan Feld in which players are allowed to do a certain number of actions each turn, but what they can do is kind of dictated by the use of dice. Let's jump right in with the description of the rules, see a few example turns being played, and then I'll finish with some closing remarks. This is Macao, set up for a two-player game. Each player takes a personal board and a win rose along with 5 money. That player's color ship is placed on the first ship space, and they're placed on the turn order wall here. Whoever's in the top is going to get to go first, and then their other marker goes on the scoring track on the outside. There's also 2 beige tokens placed on either side of the tribute track, which is this here. And then these are randomized and placed on the board, but the joker tiles, which are these darker ones here, always go on these darker spaces in the city. But the rest of them are totally random. The deck of cards is shuffled the person cards with this back, but the office cards that look a little bit different are actually laid out along the board. You'll see the numbers 1 through 12 along the outside to represent the 12 rounds of the game. So you know what office cards are going to come up in the game. Also, each player takes the tokens in his or her color that they're going to use to mark the city or be punished with if they do things they're not supposed to do. And they get a whole bunch of dice that they're going to use here. The rest of the stuff just basically forms a supply of the gold and all the cubes of many different colors. At the beginning of the game only, we're going to draw 2 more cards than there are players. So we're 2 players, so that would be 4 cards. And we just lay them out. And this is the only part in the whole game that's going to be done in reverse player order. So from the bottom of the wall up. So Orange would first pick one of these cards and put it right onto his tableau. They're going to start the game with a card on their tableau. Whichever 2 cards aren't picked, no matter the player count, are just going to be discarded in a face-up discard pile. And then after that, in turn order, each player is going to pick 1 cube. It can be any color, so let's just say this guy wanted to pick green and put it next to the 1 of his win rose, and then pick 2 cubes of the same color, can be the same as the first color picked, and put them next to the 2. So everybody's going to do that, and then the actual game is going to start. The regular game is 12 rounds. In each round there's a few different phases that go in the following order: cards, dice, and then actions. So let's get into the cards phase. The first thing that happens no matter what round it is the 2 office cards are going to be laid out. And then 4 cards from the deck, irregardless of the number of players, get laid out in order under those. And these cards are going to help determine the tribute value. So the number on this side is going to be the cost of gold. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is going to go up to 4. And then this number on this side is going to be the number of points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that means this turn you would be able to buy 9 points for 4 gold as an action, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And then depending on the number of players, you're going to discard some cards. So same as the beginning of the game, there's always going to be 2 cards more than the number of players. And now in wall order from top to bottom, each player does what they did at the beginning and essentially picks one of those, places it on their tableau, and it's there to stay. If a player's tableau is full, meaning all 5 of these spaces are already occupied and taking this card makes a 6th space, they have to discard one of those cards, can be the one they just took, and they flip over one of their city tiles and turn it into a punish marker, which is going to be worth -3 at the end of the game. So next is the dice phase, in which a player, doesn't matter who, just rolls all these dice and then groups them by the number of pips showing. So we got a whole bunch of 4s and 1s. And that means that players can take those color cubes and they put them next to the corresponding space of their win row. So if they took the red, they would take 1 red and it would go next to their 1. And if they took purple, they would take 6 purple cubes, but it would go way out in here. And this is kind of the turn, so you won't get to use them for a long time, but you get a lot more, and then 4. So each player gets to take any 2. They can take the same 2 as other players, it doesn't matter, but they pick in turn order if they care to. It's usually pretty fine to just do it at the same time. But after they're done, they turn their win rows 1 space. So wherever that's facing now, so let's just pretend a guy had a red here, he would now be able to use that for this turn. If a guy turns his win rows at any point in the game and it goes to a blank space, unfortunately, you're going to get one of those -3 tokens for doing so. You got to have at least 1 in your upcoming group, and that's why you can't always take the real big numbers. And the last part of the turn is actions. And actions, again, are going to be done in player order. Players can take as many actions as they can afford, and you can afford based on whatever group of cubes is in your active supply. So let's pretend it looked like this, and it turned to here. So this player has all these cubes this turn to use as actions. Any unspent cubes are just going to be returned to the supply at the end, so you can't save them for later. If it's the active supply, you use it now or you don't get to use it. So it's recommended that you use as much as you can. So let's go through the actions you can do. The first is take a city quarter. You're limited to one per turn. You can't take all the city quarters, but the costs are just right here under them. So if I paid 1 gray, for instance, I would take this, put it on my board. There's a little ship on your board that you get to put it on. And you take one of your markers and you indicate that this space is yours. There's never anything else going to be there. That's yours for the rest of the game. But you paid the cost of it, whatever it was. There's also these joker tiles that you can get as well. And you can use them at any point in the game to either take 1 cube of any color, so you would just take that cube and put it in your active supply, or take 3 money. So the next action you can do is you can move along the turn order wall. And the first space costs 1 cube, but then each additional space costs 2 cubes. So if I discarded 5 cubes, doesn't matter what they are, I get to move 3 spaces. And if somebody's already there, you get to move on top of them. The one exception to that is if you make it all the way to the end of the turn order, and you land on that space, you got to go to the bottom. So whoever got to the end of the wall first gets to stay on top. Another thing you can do just once is buy prestige points. And this is what that tribute value calculated at the beginning of the turn. So in this turn, for instance, it would be 4 gold. You just pay it to the bank, buys 9 points. But again, you can only do this once per turn. You can't just keep buying it, as nice as that would be. Next, you can do this as much as you want, is ship move. Depending how many cubes you pay, you move your ship that many spaces. If you ever get to a space with a harbor, so let's go up to this one because this is the one we have. So Barcelona is actually a space and any number of people can be there. But you get to Barcelona, you have the good that Barcelona shows, so you can take that good from your ship, put it here, and get that many points. So that person could do this, get 5 points. If on a later turn he was in Barcelona and bought another space with one of these, like this one up here, he could immediately score the points for it because he's already at that port. And the next thing you can do in your turn is activate cards. So if you have a card on your tableau, it has a cost in the top of it. If you can pay those cubes from your active supply, you get to put that card next to your tableau, so it won't be there anymore. So if I had these 4 green, I could pay them, and I could take this off of here, and I could now use it. This has the ability to return 1 green cube to the supply and take 1 gold. And you can use each of those abilities once per turn, although there are some cards that are always in effect. But for the most part, it's just a once per turn. And there's some that give you points at the end of the game, but they do indicate that on them. So I like to tap them just to remember I used them, but you can do whatever you'd like. And the game continues like that, but by the time you get to the 8th round, you'll start seeing some indicators on the board that in the 8th round, 6s become 1s. So when you roll those during the dice phase, they go down to 1s immediately, just because there's not 6 rounds left. So if you put them 6 out, you would never get to use those cubes. So by the time you're at the 12th round, everything is a 1. So after the 12th round, there is a final scoring, and it works like this. For any cards still in your tableau that you didn't activate by paying their costs and putting them next to during the game rounds, you're going to take another punish marker, which are worth -3 points, as already mentioned. So at this time, you lose 3 points for each punish marker you have, but then you get some points for any cards you have with endgame effects, and each player gets 2 points per connected city he has here. So if this player had purchased all these cities like this and they're connected in a row, he would get 6 points. Up here wouldn't connect to that one, so he wouldn't get anything for it, but his longest continuous connection is 2, 4, 6, 2 points per tile. And then the game ends, and the player with the most points wins. Let's get going with our example playthrough. So in reverse player order, we're actually going to choose a card. So Orange is going to choose first because he's at the bottom of the pile. So Orange is going to take this guy and puts him right in his tableau. He's not activated yet, but he's in the tableau and he's taking up a space. And then White gets to choose one, and White is going to take this guy here. Okay, great. So these 2 cards are discarded, and now in turn order, White's going to go first. He picks any 1 cube to put next to his 1, and then any 2 cubes of the same color, can even be the same color as the first, to put next to the other. He's going to take 1 blue that goes next to his 1, and 2 greens here. And then it's Orange turn. He's going to take 1 red and 2 blue. So those 2s go next to the 2, and the 1 goes next to the 1. So now we enter the cards phase, and it's always these 2 cards here, the office cards, and then we draw the top 4 cards of the deck. But remember, these last 2 are going to be discarded. We're just bringing them out to calculate the tribute value. So the tribute value will be 1, 2, 3, 4 money for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 gold. So then these 2 guys go away. So now in turn order, so it's White's turn. He gets to pick one of these. He is going to go with the vault here. So he takes that and puts it in his tableau. Again, it's not activated yet. And this guy over here, he's just going to take this law card, this office card. And the rest are discarded. It might be a good idea to keep your office ones separate, but you can discard however you'd like. And then the dice are rolled because we enter the dice part of the turn. So we just separate these based on the numbers. So we've got 1, 3, 4, 5, and then a couple of 6s. White's first, so he's going to take that 3 red, and he puts that next to the 3 on his win rows. And he's also going to take that 6 green. So he takes 6 green and puts them next to the 6. Now it's orange turn. He's going to take 4 blue, and he can pick the exact same things as white, and then he's going to stick those 4 blue on there. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of tight on the screen, but he's also going to take 3 red. So we're done with the dice for this turn, so we put them away, and then we go to actions. And everybody turns their win rows, and since nobody turned to an empty space, nobody gets a minus marker. So it's going to be White's turn first, and he has 1 blue to do for an action. He's going to take that blue and buy this space here. So he gets this good, puts it in his little ship there, and then marks it on the board. He also could buy some points, and he says, I am going to pay 4 money to buy 8 points, because that's how much the tribute track is worth this turn. He could activate these if he could, and then potentially use them. Doesn't cost anything to use them. They just work once per turn, but he does not have enough cubes to do so at this time. So now it's Orange's turn, and he's going to do a very similar thing. He's going to take this one here for 1 red. He's going to throw that red back in the supply and mark it with his token. And he's also going to buy the points this turn for 4 money. So he goes up accordingly, and then we go on to the next round. Starting with the card phase, we put these out, and we bring out the 4 from the deck, and we continue. We'll be back towards the end of the game to look at a final scoring. Now that the game is over, there's a final scoring that takes place. First, we check if anybody has any cards left on their tableaus, and both people do not, so they do not receive any punish markers. Then they lose 3 points for all the punish markers they got during the game, but it turns out that neither of these players did. So now their cards at game end score points. White has a card that scores 4 points for game end, and he scores 3 points for each of his ownership markers in a dark city square, but he actually has none because he chose not to buy that joker, so he just gets the 4 points from that other card. Orange has 1 end of game card that gives him 2 points for each type of office that he activated. And he's activated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 types of offices. So that's 12 points. Lastly, we add up the value of the longest continuous chain. Orange just has lots of 1s, so he only gets 2 points because it's 2 points per tile. And White's longest group is only a 2, so he scores 4 points. And that's the game.
Macao was great fun. There's a lot of tactical play with the dice and the cubes, but there's also strategic play too. I love the element of how you can get more cubes to do more actions with, but you have to wait a longer time to get them. And you don't necessarily know what other cubes you're going to be able to use with them by the time it gets there. With that, you can play this game as conservatively or as aggressively in a risk-taking way as you please. And with the large number of different cards and just the dice rolling itself, it makes for a very varied experience each time. This one has an enormous amount of replayability, and it's one I enjoy quite a bit. I think as a medium weight game, it could work in a lot of different venues very well. The rules are very simple, so I think it works even for families that are into medium weight. But it's not super heavy or anything like that, so it'd be good for a game group, and it does get played a lot at game groups that I've seen. So if this one looks fun to you, check it out. That's Macao. Thanks for watching.